Okay, let's jump right into it. So this is the very first video I could find of Severed Steel, the oldest video. And this is a test I made. So the idea for Severed Steel from the start was like a shooter in a low poly voxel environment that you can destroy. And the first thing I did was make sure if that was even possible. So I'm shooting the wall, I'm checking the frame rate, and I'm seeing if I can even just pull off the core concept of the game. This is an Unreal Engine 4 for the voxels. I used a plugin called Voxel Plugin. And this, I was able to get this running at 60 frames per second. So this first test, it worked. The next thing I did was I thought, well, what if I have more than one character in the world shooting, right? Because I don't only want the player to destroy things, I want there to be NPCs they fight who also destroy things. So I put some NPCs in the world, made the level a little bigger, and just gave the NPCs the most basic AI. Like, they pretty much ran around the level just emptying their magazines. Well, the magazines were infinite, so there was no emptying of the magazines. They just shot constantly. And I saw what happened, and I was able to get this working at 60 frames per second. So I thought that this concept of a voxel first-person shooter was technically feasible. And I then started making some gameplay. This is the oldest actual gameplay footage I could find. You can see I got the Matrix lobby level, of course. I don't know what to say about this. It's very basic. You can shoot enemies. They seem to die. I don't think the player could take damage at this point. I do have the dive move, so Severed Steel has stunts the player can do. They can wall run, they can kick slide, they can dive, and looks like I only have diving here. But there you go, like the very earliest gameplay. Not very exciting, but that was the beginning. Then I started polishing the gameplay a bit more. You can see there's some screen tilt when you dive, there's some stunt lines. I think pretty early on I decided that whenever you're doing a stunt, you should be invincible. And these stunt lines were a way to show that you are in the invincible state. And those are in launch. They look a little different, but the concept is there, and that gameplay idea stuck. But you can see I have what else is here? I made the game the shininess. You can see I kind of made the surfaces very smooth and shiny. That look stuck around. The secret to there's two secrets to Severed Steel's look. One is everything's freaking shiny. Two is there's like a edge shader to make the edges of things like more defined and glow. That's the secret to Severed Steel's look, and of course the voxels, the low poly look they give. But so you can see I just took the original game concept and I'm just adding a little bit of polish to it. The game's still a jank fest, but it is progressing. Then I started experimenting a little bit with different environments. Here I have like an outdoor environment with the sky. I was messing around with making the enemies out of voxels, so you can see that I'm actually like carving this enemy. A little morbid, but I thought it had some potential. The enemies being made of voxels was very performance heavy, and it crashed. It was a risky mechanic. I decided it wasn't worth the risk. And the outdoors, I think eventually, well, actually, it was later I dropped outdoors. Some videos you'll see more pathetic attempts for me to make Severed Steel have outdoor levels. And I eventually, it totally dropped it for the full game. Post game, there's been some like outdoor levels, like there'll be a skybox, but there's no like terrain like this. I dropped that. So back to indoors, you can see some edge shader, kind of a cell shade. That's a big part of Severed Steel's look. And I started messing a little bit with, I guess you could call it procedural animation to make reloads work, to make the gun recoil work, and to like, you see how when the character dives, you can see the shoulder. I really wanted the idea of like, imagine Max Payne, but with the camera on the character's head, but you could still see the body. You see that? I really wanted to make this work. I ultimately, after spending a lot of time on it, abandoned the idea of having a body all the time. And Severed Steel, you see your body a little bit. When you're in a stunt, your body disappears because I have no animation skills. I was not going to make that work. Is there anything else interesting in here? No, a lot of this animation code I just dropped. That's, you can see the way the elbow bends there. It's messy. That was going to be a pain to make polished. So you'll see when I look down now, you'll see that you are a female character with one arm. So this is the first time I thought of Steel as a character. I don't even think her name was Steel back then. I feel like her first name was Eve or something. I can't remember. But the idea for her came about pretty much because I was getting sick of trying to work on animations, reloading animations, and all the stuff you can do with the character's left hand, you know, keeping a grip on the weapon while you're looking in all sorts of different directions. So that's where the idea of, like, what if the character didn't have a second arm? So I thought I'd experiment with that, and that's where the concept for this character came from, just me not wanting to make animations. And I'll talk about it later, but I do think the one-armed character is a huge part of why the gameplay is... I mean, I would call the gameplay compelling. I hate to compliment my own work, but people seem to like it. And the gameplay is pretty accessible, and having a one-armed character is a big part of that. And I'll get more into that later. You can also see, because the character had one arm, you see in mechanics like I was throwing the weapon, I was stealing enemy weapons. A lot of the Severed Steel's like signature mechanics came thanks to this character idea. Gameplay's still super janky though. Ragdolls are ridiculous. Oh wow. Next up. This video, I noticed I named it Brutally Honest when I uploaded it 7 years ago. Jeez. And what I did in this video, if I remember correctly, is I just took a 5-minute recording of me playing the game with no edits. Like I didn't just film the part of the game that worked well. I just filmed the whole play session and I watched it and I tried to be very honest about how it went. And it didn't go well. Like, I mean, this is just so janky. And look at this. Like, where's the character's head? They killed me through a wall. It's a mess. This was a bit of a low point, I think, in development. Realizing how much work I had to do. But I didn't quit. I was, maybe you could say, saved by Epic purchased a company called Quixel, and Quixel was a company that made textures for games, and Epic released those textures for free for anyone who uses Unreal Engine to make games. And I took those textures and I tried to remake my game's visual design with those textures. And you can see here, this is starting to look a lot like Severed Steel. A lot of these textures are still used. A lot of this filter I use is one I have like it's called a lookup table. It filters the colors of the game. This is a lookup table I use in some of the levels of the game. You can see another feature I did cut. This is a bit dark. You can't really see it, but I did work on procedural hit reaction animations. If you've played GTA 4 or 5, the way when you hit an NPC, they kind of like stumble and try to keep themselves standing. I messed with that a bit. And it looked cool sometimes. You can kind of see this character trying to catch their balance. But it was pretty performance heavy and often looked really bad and janky. So I just dropped it. I just stuck with classic animations for hit reactions. This video got 27,000 views, which to me was especially, I just felt really bad about the game. Suddenly, the game had some positive attention, and I felt much better about the game's future. I guess if there's a lesson from this chapter of Severed Steel's life, it's that I guess try to put out content about your game, put out videos, and try to pay attention to what gets people's attention, and try to be honest about how your game really is. Take a long recording of it, watch it, and be honest about how janky it is. Try to find some ways to because when you're working on a game, I think it's your baby, and you can forgive all the flaws, and you need to find a way to look at your game how it really is. Another thing I could have done would have been to have people playtest the game, and that would have been a rude awakening too. I did start running playtests shortly after this. But if people play tested the game in its previous state, it also would have been a wake up call for me. So wake up calls are good when you're developing a game. This was I think the first trailer I put out. The trick for this trailer was to hide the fact that I only had 3 levels, I think, and just keep on showing different sections of the level and hope people don't notice. This was before I got a publisher, but I think a build pretty similar to this I shared with some people on my Discord, like an invite only thing. It wasn't like it was out on IndieDB or whatever. It's like you request to join somehow, and I'd send you a Google Drive link with a password maybe. Um, I think I'm going to upload a build very close to this. Probably the build I started sending to publishers, because this is about the time the game started getting attention from publishers. Maybe a little after this, because I think you can see the potential. It looks pretty cool. It kind of brings to mind Fear, a little Titanfall, a little Hotline Miami. If you're a publisher, maybe you start seeing the dollar bill signs in your eye until you play the game. I was rejected from a lot of publishers because a running theme in this is the game did not play as well as it looked for a very long time. Not until I think the end of development, I finally got the gameplay smooth enough. And I'll talk more about that when I get to those stage in the videos. But I did find a publisher, Digerati, and they started funding the game a little bit. And the first thing I did was use the funding to pay someone to model an arm cannon for the game. So here I have a hilarious looking arm cannon, essentially like a stick sticking out of my torso. Looks ridiculous. And of course I made the foam gun from Prey. I don't know. Well, I know what I was thinking. I really wanted this game to have immersive sim elements. I wanted it to be like Prey, to be like Deus Ex. Which was insane in retrospect, especially for a first game. Immersive sims with advanced physics are very hard to make. A lot of the stuff you're seeing got removed. Yeah, check this out. So I cut a section out of this marble thing, and then wait for it. Gravity gun. I stick it to the goo. Severed Steel didn't need that. Like, I don't know what I was thinking. It was fun. It was fun to work on, and it does look kind of cool. But picture playing Severed Steel. This does not fit into the gameplay. So everything you're seeing here was cut. And geez, I don't know what to say about this. I guess for an indie dev, again, if you're a dev watching this and you're working on really cool, complex features like this, you really got to ask yourself, does your game need this? Especially if it's your first game. Severed Steel reviewed well, and it sold well, and it didn't have any of this. It just had like one mechanic that we focused on obsessively, and it was combat. And I think that's like, for me, that was the only way I could get my first game shipped. I'd probably still be working on it if I kept those immersive sim elements. Another thing about indie dev, like in that last video, the cannon looked ridiculous. That like appendage sticking out of you. To me, it looked great. And then I was playing like Metroid Prime to see how they handled the arm cannon, and I'm like, oh my god, their arm cannon looks so much better. So I scaled and moved the arm cannon's location. This is the same arm cannon model as this, as this. It's just I moved it and scaled it, and this looks. I think that looks great. Looks powerful. Looks stout. But I didn't. It's funny. Like I didn't see that this one was bad. I thought that looked great. When it's your game, it's your darling. And it's really a theme in this video is it's hard to see when something you're working on isn't right. And if you're lucky, you'll get the right stimulus that wakes you up, be it seeing another game or seeing a video or having someone play your game. Sometimes you just need to be someone or something has to shake you and make you realize you're doing the wrong thing. That is cool though. Yeah, outdoors. Blah blah. What's up next? So continue on my trend of make a very flabby game design that had a lot of features that the game didn't need. I tried to go straight up Metal Gear Solid with like a codec system. This is essentially the Otacon of Severed Steel, and he was gonna like give you objectives. This was my first attempt at an actual level. So far the game only had just combat scenarios, like essentially the firefight mode if you've played Severed Steel. Then this is my first attempt at an actual campaign level where you had to rob this bank. Kind of cool. You could see like the ideas I was chasing, but that just slows you down. Like, it sounds cool to cut the thing open, but it's a pain to like select you gotta go to laser mode, and then you gotta cut the thing, and then you better not run out of ammo. I don't know what would have happened there if you ran out of cannon ammo. Ugh. So here I am, robbing this bank. I don't know if this video has me actually going into the vault. No, I don't think that was in yet. Oh, look at me cutting. I was so proud of myself for this cutting feature. So silly. I'm going to upload some build with this bank level, with when you can go into the vault, you can play with all the tools. So you can get a feel for what it was like. There'll probably be links in the comments if I get them up in time before this upload. So yeah, that was the bank mission. And another idea that I worked on, stolen from Prey again, is the idea that, like, you know, the windows are fake. You know, you look out and it's like a green paradise, but it's actually an Arctic nightmare. They're lying to you. Dystopian sci-fi nonsense. This whole, like, I had to like render the world twice. And you can see it looks super janky. I bet I could have polished it up. It wasn't worth what it cut into frame time, and it definitely wasn't worth the development time. So here, I went back to focusing on combat. And then that's where the magic of Severed Steel was. Like, this moment, like, you throw the weapon, the guy drops the gun, you grab the gun. That's what I should have been focusing on from the start. And I think in development, I was always shifting on different things. Like, I'll work on campaign for a bit, I'll work on graphics for a bit, I'll work on combat for a bit. And in this loop, I think I was back to combat. And yeah, I added the grab, which is such a key part of the Severed Steel experience. This was the last gasp of my immersive sim idea where I'm like, you know what this game needs? You know what Severed Steel needs? A snowmobile. Which was, jeez, my publisher should have dropped me. When I showed them this snowmobile. Severed Steel did not need a snowmobile, but my idea was, so I take this, like, the world, because the game takes place in, like, this corporate structure in, like, an Arctic whatever mega base, and the idea was that you'd ride a snowmobile to different wings of the complex, and then you'd use your arm cannon to break in and do your mission. Honestly, it sounds like a cool idea. I could see why I did it, but like, I was already like the moment to moment gameplay was janky, buggy. The missions weren't particularly fun, and I was trying to take this unfun thing and just strap an open world to it. Not the right idea at all. I guess you could say, though, that Echo Point Nova, my next game, was sort of the realization of this. Like, you could see the parallel between the snowmobile and the hoverboard. Open world, zooming around, high-octane combat scenarios. You could even see, you know, you have in Echo Point Nova, you have the left-hand power. You swap your powers that help you navigate or fight. So, I guess eventually, like, you know, 6 years later, I realized, or 7 years later even, I realized my open world vision, but I was not experienced enough as a developer at all. I should not have been doing that. So this was the next big breakthrough for the game. Like I said, I made the bank level. It wasn't very good, and it took a lot of effort to make, and it was very tough to make levels. But this level you're seeing here wasn't designed by me. It was made by a fan of the game who goes by the name Bloody. And Bloody said he wanted to help me with the game, and I said, well, that's kind of impossible because my level editor sucks. That should have been a red flag for me that I really need to fix my workflow. But then I remembered that the tool I used, the plugin I used for Unreal Engine called Voxel plugin, lets you import voxel worlds from this program called Magic of Voxel, which I will pull up. So this tool called Magic of Voxel lets you edit and make voxel structures. All right. See, I can make like a building or whatever. And I'm like, well, why don't you try to make a level in Magic of Voxel and I'll import it. Because there's no way you're using my tools, because my tools suck. And, well, two things. One is I'm sure some of you watching this video will have used a Severed Steel level editor. This, I borrowed heavily from this. Like, I haven't used this thing in years, but I can just start doing things because I remember, because I use a lot of the same keybinds for Severed Steel. So that's how good this tool was, is I copied as much as I could to make the official level editor. But this level you're seeing here was made by Bloody and Magic of Voxel. And this was the first good level in the game. I think the game had been in development for like a year at this point, and it had not had a good level yet, really. Like, why is this level good? Well, it has a lot of verticality, a lot of contrasting spaces. You have these ramps, you have these tight rooms, you have the open space in between. And if Bloody played it or saw me played it and wanted to make changes, you know, it's pretty easy to jump in here and be like, oh, hey, we don't want a roof here. You know, oh, we don't want, this door here was a bad idea. Well, I don't know what I just did there. But you see this was not how my editor was at the time. This was so much more powerful. Huge step in development of this game. I mean, this was one of the last breakthroughs. I think there's one more breakthrough, which I'll get to later, but this was one of the last. Because now we actually could make good levels. What? Wow, that's a crazy idea. Good levels. What's this next video? Oh, so this is another import of Magic of Voxel. Players of Severed Steel might remember this level as it's called like Upper Admin in Severed Steel. And yeah, that was originally not made with the game's in the game's level editing tool. It was made with that Magic of Voxel, which had its downsides. Like you couldn't, I didn't have a way yet to like texture the worlds with Magic of Voxel, so it was just essentially concrete, no lighting, right? It was very basic, but the geometry was good. Next up was my attempt at, so I have this new concept for levels. They're not immersive sims anymore. I dropped that idea. They were combat arenas. And I had the idea to keep the objectives simple. If you play the bank level that I'll upload, there's puzzles, there's tools you have to use, there's directions you have to follow. Like there's a compass, you got to find the northeast room. And it's not on your mini map, you have to literally use the compass to find the northeast room. Whereas in this level, for example, the objective was get to the top. Simple, straightforward. Yeah, this was a cool level. I think I made a mini 3-level campaign to test things out, which was also huge because my last attempt at a campaign had 1 level, and that's as much as I could do before it failed. Now I had a 3-level campaign, so that's a good sign. I don't know if it's worth talking about. I had this dialogue. I still want to do the codec system. I was doing it between levels. I think what we ended up with was every like 4 or 5 levels would be like a short comic cutscene, and you weren't barked at like that during the level. Like this is who's gonna read that in the middle of combat. But this is starting to feel like the Severed Steel campaign. Tight, short levels, simple objectives. So then I started working on ways to have an in-game level editor. So here's the in-game level editor. Here's another example of it. So you can see I can move guys around. I've got lights. I can see, look at that, add a box, drag it out. I cannot overstate how important a good workflow for making levels is. Your game is really only as good as your levels are. Like, if Severed Steel had all of Severed Steel's mechanics, but the levels were all like the lobby level you saw at the beginning of the video, because that was the extent of what my tools could do, or the bank level. They were all just like big empty rooms with the occasional column and like door to a small side empty room, and like anything more complex than that was such a pain. Whereas this new tool set, it's like doodling on a piece of paper. It's just like you just draw. It's like drawing. It's pretty intuitive. Severed Steel is a pretty active level editing community, and I think it's because the tool is pretty straightforward and easy to use. Yeah, this turbocharged the development, having like a good level editor. And now the game is really starting to look like Severed Steel, because I, had been working on the combat. As I was messing with all these other things, I'd always loop back to the combat and continue polishing the combat. So the combat was starting to shape up. It wasn't quite perfect yet, and we'll get to what brought it over the finish line in a moment. But you can see that like this feels like Severed Steel. It looks like Severed Steel. It acts like Severed Steel. We're on like the final-ish stretch. This is just me messing with glass. A lot of ideas get stripped when you realize how performance heavy they are. Like, that's a lot of physics to simulate. What's this video? Oh, just more polish. And, oh yeah, this is cool. This is still in the game. You can kick objects at people. It's hard to say when a feature you're working on is a rabbit hole and when it's not. Like, players, probably like 1% of players know you could do that. But I don't regret working on it. I don't know. Whereas like a lot of like the laser I do regret working on. I don't know. Okay, so this was this is where, okay, so I have to shout someone out here. So you'll see at the start of this level, this is how Severed Steel gives you objectives now. Destroy thermal controls. In a game as fast-paced and adrenaline-heavy as this, I don't know why I was always trying to like, let's have a codec call. Let's have a little radio thing that pops up during a level and tells you what to do. That was not going to work for this pace of gameplay. Like, you play this game, it's bloodlust mode. Like, give me something to shoot at. I don't want to read. But you still have to give the player objectives and things to do, and they have to kind of have some context and be somewhat interesting. And Jeff Luke, who worked with me, he was with the publisher Digerati, came up with, I think we borrowed it from Superhot technically, but it fits Severed Steel so well. It just fits the pace and everything. And he suggested we do that. And I was ready to hear stuff like that then, because at this point I was sick of really complex game design. I realized like all these crazy ideas I had of complexity. The adding complexity to the game was not helping. This was the point of the game where it was time to remove complexity, because that brought the combat more and more to the forefront, and the less other features there were, the more development time and resources I had to focus on the combat and the levels. Of course, I mean, combat and levels is what Severed Steel is all about, and it took a couple of years to figure that out. But this was another big breakthrough. So this is a video of me playing the game only with one hand. So when I had decided to make the protagonist a one-handed protagonist, I realized that it would be pretty bad if you needed two hands to play the game. Like, for accessibility reasons, like if someone saw this game as a one-handed protagonist and they go to play the game, but the controls are like literally impossible to play with one arm. I don't know, bad vibes, bad look. So I started messing with like, well, how do I make the game work with one hand? And this worked. It just worked out so well because while Jeff Luke at Digerati was helping me trim the fat off the game, get it down to its bare essentials so we can ship it in a good state, I was at the same time trying to figure out how to make the game work with one-handed controls. And then those two directions went in the same direction because some of Jeff's suggestions, which he didn't make to help me with my one-handed gameplay idea, such as like I think he had the idea where like I used to have there was a use button and a kick button. And Jeff was like, well, why don't we just combine those? Like, if you want to open a door, you kick the door. Why would you have a separate use button? And then while I was trying to figure out how to make the game work with one hand, well, that's one less button bind to use. And even if you're playing the game with two hands, that's one less button bind to remember. Like, if you play the old builds of this game, which I'll upload, it's so hard to get into a flow state. The game is fighting you. Like, when you go to pick up a weapon, you kick the weapon. Or you go to kick someone, and you press use, and nothing happens. Like, you're always, like, fumbling over the keys, and there's no flow state. Retrospective Steel now is all flow state. Like, we designed it just so, like, as soon as possible, you can just, like, get your brain on the game's frequency and just, like, lose yourself in the music and the lights and the fighting and the slow motion. And that the game, for the first 2 years of development, the game was not like that. It was really in the final stretch where, like, the level design was simplified, the level tools were optimized for iterative design, the combat was brought into the forefront. All my silly immersive sim ideas I dropped so I could just focus on polishing the gameplay. And with the combat, we removed as many barriers as possible between the player thinking about what they want to do and doing what they want to do. Like, the less keybinds, the better. The more we could do automatically, the better. Like, picking up weapons automatically was added in this final stretch. And again, I think if I recall, that was another Jeff Luke idea. Of like, well, what if weapons could be picked up automatically? And I kind of remember the meeting, and like me and another guy were like, that's kind of part of the challenge. But then I tried it, and I'm like, what was I thinking? Like, the game is so much better. And it's an option. Like, the beauty of gaming is the options. Well, one of the beauties of gaming is the options menu. So a lot of these game design choices that you're iffy about, just first put it in as an option and then sit on it for a bit. And then maybe you decide that the default option is the thing you weren't sure about because it feels so much better. So this was the final stretch. And pretty much after that, we had Severed Steel. It was just a matter of continuing to polish things, pumping on as many levels as we could. When the game first launched, it was not overwhelmingly positive. It was very positive. And the biggest complaint was it's just so short. Like, the game was like 2 hours long at, maybe at the most. Some people would beat the campaign and return it under the Steam 2-hour limit. That kind of sucked. But what? Sorry. This just auto-played. This looks sick. Hoverboard game? I didn't play this. I did not get the hoverboard idea from this game, but those physics are pretty good. What's he doing? All right, sorry. I can't go back. It just kicked me out of my playlist. Sorry. I'll keep that in. That was kind of funny. What the heck was I talking about? Oh, the game launched too short. But, so this will wrap it all up. So the game launched too short, and you could say that I wouldn't have had that issue of the game being too short if from the start, like, I focused on, like, level design tools. If I focused on, like, what are players actually having fun with? Like, if I was paying attention to playtests more. Like, I don't think any playtester told me, like, this game needs puzzles and immersive sim elements. It needs a bank level with, like, a guy in it. No one was asking for stuff like that. No one was asking for a snowmobile. They wanted the combat. And I should have focused on that from the start. And for my own workflow, like, the thing I hated working on most was the levels, because my level tools sucked. But levels are so important to game design. It's what makes combat in a game interesting and work is your levels, and it's the variety of levels that makes a first-person campaign interesting. And it was a nightmare to make levels, and I didn't realize that like fluid combat and intuitive good level design were the keys that were going to make my game work. And I think if maybe I realized that earlier on, there would have been more levels. The combat would be even more polished, and we wouldn't have had the initial stumbles at launch with pretty high refund rate. And we were pretty close to overwhelmingly positive, but did not hit it because the game was so short. And then thankfully, you know, I post-launch content. I added, I made the combat, I think the combat even better. I have the combat now is a thing where you can kick someone and they're not dead, but they ragdoll. So you can like kick someone and like blast them with a shotgun. And if you don't do that, maybe they'll get up and like, that added a whole other layer to the combat. And then we just added so many more levels. The campaign is much longer. There's all these bonus mini campaigns. So yeah, I hope this was useful, or interesting at least. Like I said, I will upload some of these, like maybe 3 builds, maybe like a beginning build, middle build, end build, so you can kind of get a feel for what the game was like to actually play, and you can see what I mean about the game not being intuitive. All right, I think that's it. Thank you for watching.